What is up, guys? Delboy here. So on February the 23rd, James Degale and Chris Eubank Jr. will be squaring off in a super middleweight showdown. It goes down at the O2 Arena in London and it will be on ITV Box Office. The card will be promoted by PBC. Obviously, ITV and the PBC have recently signed a deal to broadcast boxing in the UK. I am not going to be talking about whether this fight is pay-per-view worthy or not until the undercard has been finalised. Once the undercard has been finalised, at that point I will share my thoughts on whether I feel it's pay-per-view worthy or not. But as a main event, is this main event any worse than Dillian Whyte versus Derek Chisora 2? For my money, no, but that's just my opinion. Maybe that just goes to show how far pay-per-view standards have fell in the UK, but that's for another video. The fight itself, I've got to be honest, I like it. This fight does intrigue me for a number of reasons. There is some bad blood between these two, dating back to a sparring session around 6 or 7 years ago. Chris Eubank Jr. has been calling out James Degale for quite some time. Chris Eubank Sr. and James Degale have had their back and forths over the years, so there's bad blood there. But not only that, I feel this fight is also a crossroads fight, because ultimately the loser of this fight really does have a long road back, and chances are the loser of this fight will be eliminated from world level competition. So this fight does have a lot riding on it. Careers could be on the line. James Degale said as much himself. He said he is viewing this as a retirement fight where the loser has to retire. Now, is that a good mindset to have going into a fight like this? That remains to be seen. Maybe it will give James Degale all the motivation he needs, or maybe he's resigned to this being his last fight. You know, it could go either way, but there's a lot riding on this fight, there really is. And I like these type of crossroads fights, to be honest, because like I said, the winner, he will move on to world level contention, and the loser, he's pretty much done. Stylistically, I also believe this fight is quite interesting. I think a lot of people over the years in the UK have overrated James Degale to a certain extent. A lot of people see James Degale as like a master boxer, a guy who's going to stick and move, pop his jab, be defensively sound, but that's never been James Degale. For me, James Degale he's always been a guy who kind of relies on his athleticism, his awkwardness, his herky-jerky style. He's got weird punch technique that makes his shots come in at weird angles, and he's hard to get a read on. He's awkward, he's not slick, he's not defensively sound, he's not technically brilliant. He just has an awkward style with good athletic ability. I really don't think James Degale is great technically at all, and we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years, as James Degale has deteriorated, as his athletic ability has decreased, he's been getting hit a lot more, he has been dragged into wars, and that is because he doesn't have those technical boxing skills to fall back on. He's not like a Mayweather or an Andre Ward. You see, those guys, when they slowed down, they still had that solid base of fundamentals to fall back on once they lost that bit of speed. But Degale doesn't have that same luxury. Degale, to me, was always a guy who relied on his athletic ability. He was a guy who relied on his awkwardness. And once that starts to expire, to me he becomes a lot more beatable. And even in his prime, I felt James Degale was always beatable, to be quite honest. He was always susceptible to pressure, and he also struggled with guys who had solid boxing fundamentals, guys with good jabs and guys who could keep it long. Look at the George Groves fight, look at the Badou Jack fight, even look at the Durrell fight where James Degale starts really well, he drops Durrell twice and he's lighting him up. But look what happens when James Degale slows down, look what happens when James Degale starts to gas, look what happens when James Degale doesn't have that athletic ability to fall back on. Andre Durrell's superior technical skills start to get him back into that fight. Watch that fight back. As good as James Degale was at the start, you know, Durrell really did claw his way back into that fight, and that fight was much closer than it should have been, to be quite honest. And I think that fight symbolises James Degale's career quite well, to be honest. At his best, he's got an off-key style, he's quick, he's awkward, he can land shots at multiple different angles. You know, he's a real handful at times, but once that athletic ability, once that speed starts to wane, at that stage he really is beatable. And I think you're going to see that in this Chris Eubank Jr. fight. I think James Degale has been on the slide for quite some time. I mean, when would you say James Degale's last really good performance was? I would argue it was when he won his title against Andre Durrell, to be quite honest, and that was in 2015. We are 2019 now. To me, he hasn't looked great since then. Even in the Lucian Butte fight, he won the fight, but Butte had a lot of success in that fight. The Porky Medina fight, arguably James Degale lost that fight. Medina had a lot of success in that fight and landed some big shots. The Badou Jack fight, I felt James Degale clearly lost that fight. He was lucky to get a draw in that fight, in my opinion. And James Degale took a lot of punishment that night, and I think that fight took a lot out of James Degale. After the Badou Jack fight, he fought Caleb Truax and lost. That was a shock result at the time. Caleb Truax, not a great fighter at all, and he put a beating on James Degale in their first fight. James Degale won the rematch with Caleb Truax, but again, didn't look good doing it. It looked like he couldn't pull the trigger anymore. He just looked really disjointed and shot, to be honest with you. And I've not seen anything from James Degale for at least 4 years to get me really excited and to convince me he can compete at world level. Now, you can say that Chris Eubank Jr. isn't world level. You can say that Eubank Jr. struggles with elite level boxers, that's fair enough, but is James Degale an elite level boxer anymore? I don't think so. James Degale was never a guy who moved around, popped his jab, kept range. He was never that guy, and that is the style that Chris Eubank Jr. struggles with. We saw that in the George Groves fight and the Billy Joe Saunders fight. James Degale doesn't fight like those guys, and he never has. James Degale is not an outboxer. So I'm really not sure what people are seeing when they say James Degale is just going to outbox Eubank Jr. on the back foot. I can't see that happening. Even in James Degale's prime, he spent large portions of fights in the pocket or on the ropes, trading with opponents, being flat-footed, getting hit a bit more than he should do. You know, James Degale has always been like this. Like I said, he's always been susceptible to pressure. Just trace back his career. Now, I'm sure you guys remember the George Groves fight. He lost that fight. It was a close fight, but he lost. But look at the fight after that fight. He fought a Polish fighter by the name of Piotr Wilczewski. And that fight was for the European title at the time. And it was very close. James Degale really struggled with the pressure Wilczewski was putting him under. And that was back in 2011 when James Degale was very fresh. So, listen, James Degale has always had vulnerabilities in his career. He's never been this master boxer. And for all his flaws, Chris Eubank Jr. is a lot better than the likes of Porky Medina, Caleb Truax and Piotr Wilczewski. He's better than these guys. And I believe Chris Eubank Jr. would always give James Degale problems. Whether he would beat a prime James Degale, I don't know, but he would always give him problems in my opinion. Now, this version of James Degale I think is past his best. I think he is deteriorating. His punch volume is dropping, his stamina is getting worse, his punch resistance seems to be getting worse. He's even more flat-footed now, and Chris Eubank Jr., despite being poor at cutting off the ring, I don't think he's going to have a hard time finding James Degale. I think he will get close to James Degale, and from that point it is going to be interesting to see what he does. I think he has the ability to outwork James Degale and bash him up on the inside. The only thing James Degale could do to offset that is clinching and holding Eubank Jr., similar to what he did against Caleb Truax in their rematch. But I really feel James Degale is going to struggle up close with Eubank Jr. I don't think he can keep his feet moving for 12 rounds. I think he will revert to type and have large spells of being flat-footed and sitting on the ropes, sitting in the corner, and at these times Eubank Jr. will get his work done. And to me, James Degale just doesn't have a world-class jab to keep Chris Eubank Jr. off of him, and as a result, I do make Eubank Jr. a favourite. And the bookies have it the same. I think a lot of people see James Degale as a spent force. Not my official prediction video, but I think you can tell the way I'm leaning. I will watch some fights back, and I probably will make a prediction video nearer the time. But share your thoughts below. How do you see this fight going? Peace.